In 1808, French soldiers occupied strategic cities all over Spain, which had been forced into an alliance with France 8 years ago. After arresting the royal family, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, installed his brother as King of Spain. When French soldiers tried to capture one of Charles de Bourbon's sons in Madrid, this led to an uprising at the 2nd of May, which was brutally crushed by French forces. All over Spain, civilians and Spanish soldiers, incited by the church, picked up their guns in anger and began an attritional resistance against the Grande Armée, which itself ruthlessly answered the unrest with brute force. During the following 6 years of war, the Spanish established an asymmetrical style of fighting, since then known as guerrilla warfare. It is at this time, somewhere in Spain, that our little story takes place. In need of supplies, a group of French soldiers led by a chasseur cheval leave their camp and roam through the mountainous countryside, while some Spanish guerrilleros and their chief lay out in ambush and patiently await the enemy. See how this fight turns out in Guerrillas of the Peninsular War, an 18-card print and play wargame for 2 players designed by Joe Schmidt. So in this action phase, we get new orders, and the Spanish have the initiative with 4 action points, but no additional effects. So what will they do? So they move 3 guerrilleros to the northeast to hinder the French moving into the village. And the French, they have 2 action points and a +1 die roll modifier, but they cannot do anything with these few points. They decide anyway to move 2 units to the north in the open, and maybe they hope to bring their remaining forces there in the next turn and then move east to the village. Next turn, and nobody gains initiative, we have to decide via die roll, and it's the French who got the initiative, and they have 3 actions, and they will move all their forces into the open. The French now, they have also 3 action points, and what do they want to do with 3 action points? Nobody knows, but they know that the French will have 4 action points in the next round, and they themselves will have 2 action points and a +1 modifier, so they will move up north and join forces, so that they have more soldiers there if the French try to attack them. So, as we already knew, the French have the initiative. So the French split their forces and spread out to collect supplies at the end of this phase, but they have to leave 1 unit behind. And the Spanish, they have now 2 action points and a +1 modifier to all combat rolls, so they decide to advance with their guerrilla chief and conduct an attack against this lonely French soldier. And the French soldier inflicts 1 stress, but the guerrilla chief, he has no problem to deal 2 stress to the French unit, and that is really a success for the guerrilleros. They defeated a French soldier. So now we're in the end phase, and at this turn the French can collect 2 additional supply tokens. So now they have 4.5 victory points, but they lost a unit, and there are 2 points for the Spanish. So in the next action phase, first turn, the French have the initiative They get 4 actions with no additional effect. And they will decide to fight the Guerrilla Chief, paying 3 action points to move north and 1 to attack. The French inflict 3 hits on the Chief, whereas he inflicts 2 hits on the French, so 1 stress hit in the favor of the French, so the Guerrilla Chief loses 1 spirit. Oh, the Spanish, they have 2 actions and a +1 die roll modifier. And what can they do with 2 actions? I think they will move in to try and fight the French. So 1 additional guerrero moved to support the Guerrilla Chief, and now they have a +1 die roll modifier on all rolls. And they conduct an attack. Both sides inflict 3 hits. So the result is nothing. They stay engaged, they fight and fight and fight on. Next turn in this phase, now the Spanish have the initiative with 4 actions. And they move south to pick up this lonely French soldier there and conduct an attack. And the French soldier, he fights back, he inflicts 1 hit on the Spanish, but they inflict 2 hits on him, so he's defeated. And the French now have to think if the chasseur should cancel this spirit loss or not. So that's quite a tough question, because the chasseur only has 2 spirit left. So that would be the last time that he could do so, but I think they really have to. They cannot lose another unit. So the chasseur only has a spirit of 1 left. And now the French can take up to 2 actions and add a +1 die roll modifier on all combat rules. So they may want to move in, but the Chief is the problem. He really, with his 3 or higher, is pain in the ass. But the French want to force a decision, so they move in with the chasseur and they conduct an attack. And they can inflict 3 hits due to the +1 die roll modifier, whereas the Spanish only can inflict 2 hits on the French, so the Spanish, they have to take a step loss. And the Guerrilla Chief, he has only 2 spirit remaining. He could take the spirit loss, and he will do so. Third turn in this action phase, both sides can get 3 actions, so a die roll must decide. And the Spanish gain the initiative. They have 3 actions and may reroll 1 combat die. 2 action points spent by moving 1 guerrero from the northeast into the town, and they will now conduct an attack against the chasseur and his comrade. And the Spanish inflict 3 hits on the French, whereas the French don't have any dice luck whatsoever and inflict no hits at all, so they have to take 3 spirit losses. That means the chasseur and the soldier are defeated. Now that was quite a victory for the Spanish indeed, and the French now have 3 actions and may reroll 1 combat die, but they lost 2 soldiers and the chasseur, and now they have nearly no chance remaining to beat the Spanish. They will use their points to simply move into the vacant a town here to the south, and there they can collect an additional supply token. So they now have 5.5 victory points, whereas by defeating 2 soldiers and the chief, the Spanish now have 6 victory points. We are in the next action phase, maybe the last one, and new orders arrive. Okay, both sides get 2 actions, so again a die roll has to decide who gets initiative, and it is the French, and they get 2 actions, and that they +1 die roll modifier to all rolls, so they decide to move into the Spanish base, which in game turns offers them nothing, but they try to avoid enemy contact here. So now the Spanish, they have 2 actions and a +1 die roll modifier 2. They simply move with 2 guerrilleros to the east into the village. Next turn, and again a die roll has to decide who gets the initiative here. And again it's the French. They now have 3 actions available and may reroll 1 combat die. And they decide to conduct the last attack against the village. And they inflict 2 hits on the Spanish, whereas the Spanish only inflict 1 hit on them, so the Spanish suffer 1 spirit loss, and 1 of their guerrilleros is defeated, which brings the French now up to 6 victory points. So now the Spanish have 3 action points and they may reroll 1 combat die too, but I think they will move their forces over to the east. They decided to avoid the French in the village, so they moved 1 unit out of town to the west, and then the chief joined them there in the open. And again, a die roll has to decide who gets the initiative this turn. And again, the French get the initiative, but what should they do? They get 4 action points with no additional effects. What can they do? They can stay put, but the Spanish will get 4 action points too, so they will be attacked by the Spanish, of course, but maybe they want to try to hold their position in the village and spend none of their 4 action points. The Spanish, however, will spend action points moving 3 units into the village and conduct an attack. So the Spanish inflict 2 hits on the French, whereas the French inflict only 1 hit on the Spanish, so the French suffer another spirit loss and another French soldier is defeated. They are close to defeat now. And the French are not able to collect any supply points out of the village because there are guerrilleros present there. So we check for initiative once again, and it is a French again. So they may want to disengage, but where do they want to go? Is there any chance for them to hide? No, I don't think so. And there is also no chance for them to attack properly. But they disengage with the guerrilla chief in the village and move far to the west to try to attack this little town here with 2 guerrilleros present. And indeed, they inflict one hit on the Spanish, and the Spanish are not able to deal any damage to the French, so another guerrillero is defeated. And now the Spanish, they have 3 actions and may reroll 1 combat die. And they move the chief to support the remaining guerrillero there in the west in the village, but they have no actions left to conduct an attack now. Next turn, the French have the initiative again. They get 3 actions and may reroll 1 combat die. And because they know the Spanish get 2 actions this turn, they try to get to the northeast and to this little town. Maybe they can hold this position and collect another supply point. Who knows? Now the Spanish have 2 action points and add a +1 to all combat rolls, but they can't really use this special effect, so they simply move their chief into the open and try to cut off and catch this last remaining French soldier. Last turn in this action phase, initiative is Spanish, and they will move in now and conduct an attack on the last remaining French soldier. And indeed, they inflict 2 hits, whereas the French only inflict 1 hit, so the last French soldier is defeated and the Spanish guerrilleros win the fight somewhere in Spain.